All right, welcome everyone. So today what I want to do is show you guys some tools to make some packaging. I'm going to show you basic boxes, but I also want to get into a little bit more organic shapes so you can design something a little fancier. I'm just going to be doing containers, but of course you can do anything you want as far as what you're going to be relating to your artist. So I'm going to go to my templates here and make sure that I'm using my small object inches. If you have a PC, you might have to open your program and go up to File, and then go to New ... and it'll give you the option for small object inches. But it should be selected by default by now. All right, so now I'm going to go into my perspective view here, and I'm just going to draw a cylinder. So I'm going to type cylinder, click, drag out, and I'm going to use a radius of 1.5, which is already selected there, but if it's not, I can just go 1.5, enter, and then I'm going to go up that same distance, 1.5. And if I right click, I can go to shaded here and see that it has three-dimensional form. If you've got a PC, there's a little down arrow next to your viewport window, and that will have this menu as well. Okay, so next I want to do a fillet edge. So I'm typing fillet edge, enter, and I'm going to select my radius diameter, which is, or my radius, which is what I'm going to do is 1/8, enter. And then I'm going to select this edge here and hit enter twice to make it have a beveled edge. And then I'm going to do the same command again, but this time I'm going to do, actually not the same command again, I'm going to do chamfer edge this time. So, and I'm going to do a distance of 0.5. And then I'm going to select this edge down here and hit enter twice. And you can see that gives me a little bevel there. I've already got a good start here. Maybe all I need to do here is put a cap on it of some sort that has a little bit more design flair of some sort. So I'm actually just going to use a sphere to do this. So I'm going to type sphere, enter, and I'm going to start my sphere in the midpoint here. And if you're not getting these midpoints, make sure your snaps are turned on. They're on the left-hand side if you have a Mac, and on the bottom if you have a PC. And I'm going to do my sphere with a diameter or a radius of 1.5. Oops, went to the wrong spot, but I'm going to move it. Type move, enter, and then I'm going to kind of hover around and look for the center line there. And move it, find that center over here too. Okay, so now I've got this shape on top, and it already looks alright, but I'm going to actually change it a bit. So with spheres or any other surfaces, you can use what's called control points. So if I click on this sphere and then I right click, I can turn control points on, or you can type points on if you have a PC. And this gives us these little points here that I can grab and manipulate and kind of change the form a little bit. And by default, it comes out with only a certain amount of control points, but I can actually change those. So if I go to rebuild command, I select my object to rebuild and I hit enter. I can now change the point count. So I'm going to use 10 and 10 here, which will give me a little bit more, as you can see when I do this. And that way I can fine-tune my shape a little bit more. And it's best to mostly just drag them out. You don't want to drag them too far the wrong direction, or you might tear your surface. Like if I pulled this all the way through, you can see that's some funky geometry. We can't use that. So let me undo. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on one of these and pull this side up a little bit. So you can see I can kind of make a cool shape doing that, and then I'm going to actually squash it because I want it to be kind of a lid. So all I did there was I grabbed this scale part on my gumball, which if your gumball is not turned on, it's up here or down here if you have a PC. That's called the gumball. And the gumball allows you, of course, to move things. Command Z, undo. But it also allows you to scale and stretch the object a little bit more. And if I even wanted to, I could rebuild with more control points if I wanted to do 20 and 20 or something like that. That'll give me a lot more points, which means that when I pull out on like one little spot here, it'll make it kind of pointier, which is kind of good for, you know, style. All right, so I've kind of tweaked this thing a little bit. You can see what you can do with a sphere. Now I want to make this a lid. So if you look at it, you can see that it comes out and kind of sinks into the object some. So I'm going to use this other object to split this object, and then I'm going to actually put a bottom on it. So let's go ahead and split this object. So I'm going to type split, enter, select the object to split, which is this one, enter, select my splitting object, which is this one, enter. And you can see that now that bottom is all open for us. So let me undo to move it back. I'm actually going to turn my control points off, so you can either type points off or right click and turn your control points off. If you have a PC, you just have to type points off, PTS off. Okay, or PT off, I'm not sure. All right, so this is kind of a container. I can do a few more different things. I actually want to find the bottom because it's in there. Yep, there's the bottom. And I could use this for something else or just toss it by deleting it. Undo. Bring that back. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to split this object, enter, with this object, enter. And what that's going to do is that should give us a little spot that we can use to close off this bottom. Get it? So let me just undo twice. And I'm going to actually copy this part. So I'm going to go from left to right here with my selection tool to grab that both of these bottom parts. I'm going to move this 20 inches that way. Delete this bottom part and move and copy this 20 inches that way. And click to end the command. And now what I've got is a shape that I can move this back over here 20, and it lines up with that perfectly. That's why I'm moving it by 20. So I should be able to join these two together to make one piece. So that'll be my lid. And then I'm going to join this back together. So just join, J-O-I-N, or the puzzle pieces. And then I can move this back -20. So I'm going to right click and look at it and render now. And my zoom is all wonky, so I'm going to use the zoom extents tool here, which you can just type zoom and bring up a toolbar too when you go extents. All right, so this is like maybe an Anish Kapoor makeup jar or something like that. It has kind of that geometry to it. So when I think of these artists and how they relate to the brands, I'm looking for style. I'm not necessarily looking for you to brand the artist as if you're selling them. So if you look at Anish Kapoor's work, it has a lot of organic forms and stuff in it. So I'm going to use the style of Anish Kapoor to make an object like a makeup case or even maybe perfume or something like that. But this is a good example of just a basic product design, a little bit more complicated than just doing a box, but maybe now we do a box and use this and the box together as kind of like a way of staging. So I'm going to right click and go back to shaded so my computer is capable of keeping up with us. All right, so now let me just do a box for this, and that box would be a rectangle. So I'm going to type rectangle, enter, click, and start to drag out. And as you drag out on the mouse, we'll do a maybe 3.125, enter, 3.125, enter. So I'm making it exactly 1/8 of an inch bigger than the object. And then I'm going to extrude this up, and I'm going to extrude it up, and maybe even look at it from a front view. So click on that front view there and make sure it's taller than the object, basically, is all I'm doing. Just deleted that curve I accidentally selected. So now if I move this over, you can see that our object would fit in there. So let's go back to perspective here, and I'm going to make this box a shell so that it has an open top. So I'm going to type in shell, enter, click on this top face, I want to remove that, and then my thickness I want to make 1/16, so 1/16 of an inch. So that gives me a box as well. And if we wanted to make a lid for the box, we could draw a rectangle, go from corner to corner, click on that rectangle or curve there, extrude it up, 1/16, enter. And then if we wanted to have the box be open, we can rotate this. I can use this tool here just to flip it up, and then I can use my move. If I type MOVE, enter, it says select the object, which is already selected, and then it says select a point to move it from. So I'm going to click on this little point right here, and I'm going to move it to that point right there. And you can choose to maybe do 2 rectangles and make this open 2 different ways, and you could even put like another extruded shape on the front there to make it have like a lip to appear to be like a closure device of some sort. So you can research more box design to make something that is a little more visually interesting, but just using these same tools. You could even make a hinge using the same methods that you made the hinge for the kiosks. But I'm actually going to rotate this a little bit at an angle, so maybe I'll do a 45, and then move, enter again, click my endpoint, and move it to that back endpoint. So now I can look at it in rendered to see what it looks like. Okay. So if you're going to use just a box and an object for your 2 objects, your object better be pretty sophisticated as far as how much time you spent on it, or your design for your labeling has to be pretty good too, so that it makes the proper impression. Alright, so now we've got these 2 shapes. We need to slice them up a little bit to be able to put labels on them. So I'm going to slice this first using a front view, and I'm just going to draw a line where I think I'm going to want my slices. And I'm going to do it maybe right above that chamfered edge there. And I'll do one up here, another one. So I'm just making these lines that I'm going to use to cut the object. So let's switch back to perspective. And if I select these 2 lines and extrude them, I'll get some surfaces. And you can see how it's slicing it. Let me go ahead and put it back into shaded here, just again for the smoothness of my operation. Okay, so now let's split this object with this object and that object. So now it's all separate. So let me do that again. Split, enter. Click on what you want to split. I want to split this base. Enter. And then select the cutting objects. Click, click, enter. Alright, so now I can just delete these, and I've got a separate form there. And that's what I'm going to use to apply my my material to it. So let's go ahead and measure this. So I'm going to use DIM for dimension, and I'm going to go from there. to perpendicular. Zoom out a little bit. 0.81 is the dimension of that. So I want 0.81 by 3 is going to be my aspect ratio. So if I go over into Illustrator here. Okay, so now we're coming into to Illustrator here, and we're going to do a create new, and I'm going to create a new print file, and I'm going to change this to inches. And my width, I'm going to do a width of the circumference of this 1.5-inch circle, or 1.5-inch radius circle, which is 9.242, and a height of 0.881. And I got that circumference just by looking online, Siri, math. And then I've got this, which is going to be this exact size of our label. Say aspect ratio and everything. So now I can do type, I can do whatever I would typically do in Illustrator to design something for a label. So I'm going to click my text tool and type something with maybe a text size of 30, and go ahead and write maybe something like, Anish Kapoor scent. Call it a perfume, I guess. And again, this is just an example. I'm just trying to get you guys thinking. I don't want something this bland. All right, so next I'm going to just draw a rectangle. I'm doing something very simple just to kind of show you. I'm more interested in showing you how to get the label onto the object than I am showing you how to use Illustrator, right? So I'm going to hit right click on this and go to arrange and send it to the back. And then I'm also going to change the color of it. So I'm going to make it kind of a red, maybe like a little darker. Just trying to think of an Anish Kapoor-like color. So we'll do that. It's not centered, it's not beautiful, but it's going to work for what we want. So let's go ahead now and save this file, export as, and I'm going to use a PNG file for this, just so that if you wanted to keep white space, it would come out as clear on the object. So I'm going to go ahead and export this as a PNG to my desktop and change the resolution. I'll bump it up. Maybe 150 is probably good enough. But if it's coming out pixelated, you're going to have to go back to your file and change this. So I've got that. Now I'm going to go back to Rhino here. And I'm going to apply that as a material. So materials are on the right side here if you've got a little paint tube, or you can type the word materials and it should come up. I'm going to hit the plus sign and add a custom material. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Or where is it? Right here. Color. Click to assign a texture. And I'm going to do my PNG and open it up. And then for my bump map, I'm also going to do that same file. Okay, and then I'm going to just click and drag it to apply it to the object. Click and drag. Okay. You can see a few things. One, it's upside down. And two, it's not quite lined up right. So let's see. Okay, so I just double clicked on, let's go back here, I'll show you what I did. So if you double click on this, should get there we go. This here, where I can go into rotation and I can do 180 tab, and now you can see that it's fitting my object better. And it looks like my size is a little off. I should have probably made it a little taller. So if this isn't fitting, you just go back to your Illustrator file and edit the sizes of it. So next, let's go ahead and, or maybe if we do a repeat, let me change this to 0.9. Let's see. Or 1.1. Well, I'll just have to adjust that in Illustrator. And you can see our bump map is also flipped, so I got to go back and change that. So let's go back, click on this, brings this up, rotation, let's do 90 or 180. And then change this to 1.25. It should line back up. And then I can do other stuff in here, like I can make the finish of it glossy, have some reflectivity, too much reflectivity. And if I wanted it to be transparent, I could also play with that there. And then I might want to add some glass, so I'll do glass and make the top clear. Okay. For some reason I had all my objects locked. So now let's put glass on the top. And maybe even change the color of the glass. Give it a tint. You know, this color scheme is awful. But you get the idea. So I can change some colors, and then what I would do here is, of course, add more labeling and stuff to the box the same way. Cut it up if you need to, or you can also just explode it, and that'll allow you to apply materials to every different side. But if you're going to do that, you want to make sure and probably group everything together later on, just so you don't accidentally, move a face out or something like that. But if it's exploded, you should be able to add materials to the whole thing, one piece at a time. Later on, when we get into exporting for other programs, if you explode things, you want to make sure you group them back together or put them all on the same layer, maybe call a layer the box. So let's maybe even start doing that a little bit. So if I want to create layers, I just type layers, and it switches my mode over here to layers, and I can retitle these layers, box, and then select this whole thing and right click on the box right here and say move objects to this layer. And you'll know when I go back to shaded here, it's red because it matches up with that layer. So let's go back to rendered. And that way, if I want to, I can select the whole thing all at once. I can do all kinds of stuff. Select objects on this layer, and it'll select the box. Makes it easy when things are exploded, so you can make sure you grab everything. All right, so that's a pretty basic shaped object. Now I want to show you a couple of more tools on the next video for making a little bit more complicated shapes and stuff. Once you have it about here with all of your materials and textures on it, you go ahead and render it. And if I go to my render settings, render properties, render settings, which is also under file settings or file preferences if you've got a PC. I can do things like change my background color to a gradient and maybe even, change it, make it have like that red gradient to it, gray, so you can kind of create your own stylized background on here. And then you'll do your render settings at their max when you're ready to get the really fine render. And I usually like to do my render settings when I'm doing my maximum, maybe 200 DPI. And yeah, that size is probably fine. And then my size, I always want to do 17 by 11. Inches. Quality, when you're ready to do your final one, you'll do final quality. Oops. And then my gradient is fine there. Okay, so let me close this down, and I'm going to do a full render, but you might want to do a couple of render previews so you can kind of see how the lighting is working. And of course, with lighting as well, you might want to put some spotlights on it or different colored lights. But I already showed you how to do that with the kiosk, so it should be ready to go there. I'm going to pause this while it renders. All right, so this is our low quality rendering here. And I can see a couple of things. One, I can see my bump map here did not match up with the text. I had two different sizes on there, so that needs to be fixed. And also the DPI on that JPEG was not high enough, so you might have to export it a little bit larger file size to really get the tightness that you want in the lettering. But this is kind of a basic idea of what I'm looking for. The objects placed, rendered, adding materials and making your own custom materials, and then also in the background having after this is rendered, you just save it to your computer, open it in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever your choice, and add text to it. So maybe even come up with a catchy slogan or something like that based on some of the research you've done on your artist. So hopefully that kind of explains what we're looking to do. Next video, I'm going to do show you a few more tools in case you want to do something a little bit more or less basic, basically. So thank you. All right, that'll do it for this one, though.